is Manamarco, King of Worms by Horacles. O sacred isle Artium, where rosy light infuses air, o'er towers and through flowers gentle breezes flow, softly sloping green-kissed hills to crashing foam below. Always springtide afternoon housed within its border, this mystic, mist-protected home of this psychic order, those counselors of kings, cautious, wise, and fair. 10 years and 30 since the mighty Romans fell, 2 brilliant students studied within the psychic's fold. One's heart was light and warm, the other dark and cold. The ladder, Manamarco, whirled in a deathly dance, his soul in bones and worms, the way of the necromance. Entrapping and enslaving souls, he cast a wicked spell. The former Galerion had magic bold and bright as day. He confronted Manamarco beneath grey Sapora Tower, saying, "Your wicked mysticism is no way to wield your power, bringing horror to the spirit world. Your studies must cease." Manamarco scoffed, hating well the ways of life and peace, and returned to his dark artistry, his paints, death, and decay. O sacred isle Artium, how slow to perceive the threat, when the ghastly truth revealed how weak the punishment. The ghoulish Manamarco from the isle of the wild was sent to the mainland dawn's beauty, more death and souls to reap. "You have found a wolf, and sent the beast to flocks of sheep," Galerion told his masters. "A terror on Tamriel has set." "Speak no more of him," the sage cloaks of grey did say. 'Twas not the first time Galerion thought his masters callous, unconcerned for men and mare aloof in their island palace. 'Twas not the first time Galerion thought 'twas time to build a new order to bring true magic to all, a mighty mages' guild. But 'twas the time he left at last, fair Artium's azure bay. Oh, but sung we have of Venus Galerion many times before, how cast he off the psychic's change, bringing magic to the land. Throughout the years he saw the touch of Manamarco's hand, through Tamriel's deserts, forests, towns, mountains, and seas, the dark grip stretching out, growing like some dread disease. By his dark necromancers, collecting cursed artifacts of yore, they brought to him these tools, mad wizards and witches, and brought blood-tainted herbs and oils to his cave of sin, sweet akaviri poison, dust from saints, sheafs of human skin. Toadstools, roots, and much more cluttered his alchemical shelf. Like a spider in his web, he sucked all their power into himself. Manamarco, Worm King, world's first of the undying leashes. Corruption on corruption, till the rot sunk to his very core. Though he kept the name Manamarco, his body and his mind were but a living, moving corpse, as he left humanity behind. The blood in his veins became instead a poison acid stew. His power and his life increased as his fell collection grew. Mightiest were these artifacts, long cursed since days of yore. They say Galerion left the guild, calling it a morass, but untruth is a powerful stream, polluting the river of time. Galerion beheld Manamarco's rise through powers sublime. To his mages and lamp knights, before my last breath, face I must the tyranny of worms, and kill at last, undeath. He led them north to cursed lands, to a mountain pass, while those who survived the battle say its like was never seen. Armored with magicka, armed with enscrolled sword and axe, Galerion cried, echoing, "Worm King, surrender your artifacts and their power to me, and you shall live as befits the dead." A hollow laugh answered. "You die first," Manamarco said. The mage army then clashed with the unholy force obscene. Imagine waves of fire and froth, and the mountain shivers. Picture lightning arching forth, cracking in a dragon's sigh. Like leaves the battle mages fly, to rain down from the sky at the necromancer's call. Corpses burst from the earth to light, to be shattered into nothingness with a flood of holy light. a maelstrom of energy unleashed, blood cascades in rivers. Like a thunderburst in blue skies, or a lion's sudden roar, like sharp razors tearing over delicate embroidered lace, so at a touch did Galarian shake the mountain to its base. The deathly horde fell fatally, but heeding their dying cries, from the depths the thing they called Worm King did rise. Nairn itself did scream in the mages and necromancers' war. His eyes, burning dark fire, he opened his toothless maw, vomiting darkness with each exhalation of his breath, all sucking in the fetid air felt the icy touch of death. In the skies above the mountain, darkness overcame pale. Then Mannimarco, Worm King, felt his dismal powers fail. The artifacts of death pulled from his putrid skeletal claw. 1,000 good and evil perished then, history confirms. Among, alas, Vanus Galarian, he who showed the way, it seemed once that Mannimarco had truly died that day. Scattered seemed the necromancers, wicked, ghastly fools. Back to the mages' guild, victors kept the accursed tools of him, living still in undeath, Mannimarco, king of worms. Children, listen as the shadows cross your sleeping hutch, and the village sleeps away, streets emptied of the crowds, and the moons do balefully glare through the nightly clouds, and the graveyard's people rest, we hope, in eternal sleep. Listen, and you'll hear the whispered tap of the footsteps creep. Then pray you'll never feel the Worm King's awful touch. Well, feels very appropriate for the spooky season that we find ourselves in. You ever playing a game and like you can tell that you are remembering something wrong? Yeah, that's what it is. I just decided that I knew what the jump control was and I didn't. I was playing Fall Guys controls. This is a very different game. Well,
you know what I miss the most right now? Fresh air.
okay, that's pretty funny. Is that is a toe? Okay, well, we weren't gonna sell the toe and just not think too hard about what we do for a living. I don't need to pick up every piece of garlic. I will take the moonstone though. Ew. Gross. It's 6:12 a.m. Am I about to wake this man up? What are these nice places? Oh, I don't want to break into a house. That's rude. Goats and chickens. What a beautiful location. I guess let's just, doing a very bad job of grabbing the hanging moss here. The real glens were the dells we made along the way. Well, wait a minute, because there are places that are called Glendale. Isn't that kind of fucking redundant? Wow. I'm having to do a lot of big brain thoughts right now. I don't particularly need iron ore. I can afford to hold it though. Let's mine for a little while, shall we? So let's take a look. Difference between Glen and Dale. Oh, hydrate. Thank you for the reminder. I've got a really big head. I don't know that I have a big brain. So a dale is a valley in an otherwise hilly area, while a glen is a secluded and narrow valley. Oh, okay. So I guess what we were looking at would be a glen, if glens are allowed to have lakes in them, or ponds or what have you. And then a dale is just like a little breakup in the hills. That's pretty neat. Discovered some more locations. Sky ASMR, yeah. Sky ASMR, Sky ASMR. Look at them salmon. Oh my goodness. We will eat it, and then we will have absolute knowledge, and then perhaps we'll turn into a hawk, or there's two different tails, or maybe like the father of the person with the fish becomes the hawk, and the person with the fish then doesn't know that they shouldn't eat the fish because they'll know too much. It's an Irish mythology for certain. And by Allah Lalith. Oh no, I wanted to read it. Kelmaril Bryn had very definite opinions on how things should be done. Every slave he bought on the day he bought him or her was soundly whipped in the courtyard. Oh Jesus. Sorry about this, is not very peaceful, y'all. For a period of 1 to 3 hours, depending on the individual degree of independent spirit. The whip he used, or had his castellan use, was of wet, knotted cloth, which regularly drew blood but very seldom maimed. To his great satisfaction and personal pride, few ever needed to be whipped more than once. The memory of their first day, and the sight and sound of every subsequent slave's first day, stayed with them throughout their lives. When Bryn brought his first bossomer, he ordered his castellan to whip him only for an hour. The creature, which Bryn had named Daub, seemed so much more delicate than the Argonians and Khajiitian orcs who made up the bulk of his slaves. Daub was clearly ill-suited for work in the mines or in the fields, but he seemed presentable enough for domestic service. Daub did his work quietly and tolerably well. Sorry, I thought I was going to sneeze. Bryn occasionally had to correct him by refusing him food, but the punishment never needed to go further. Whenever guests arrived at the plantation, the sight of the exotic and elegant addition to Bryn's household staff always impressed him. "Here, you," said Ginaoth Ilak, a minor but still noble member of the house in Daril, as Daub presented her with a glass of wine. "Were you born a slave?" "No, Sedora," Daub answered with a bow. "I used to rob nice ladies like you on the road." The company all laughed in delight, but Kelmaril Bryn checked with the trader from whom he had bought Daub, and found that the story was true. The bosmer had been a highwayman, though not one of any great notoriety, before he had been caught and sold as punishment. It seemed so extraordinary that a quiet fellow like Daub, who always looked respectfully downward at the sight of his superiors, could have been a criminal. Bryn made up his mind to question him about it. You must have used some sort of weapon when you were robbing all those pilgrims and merchants. Bryn grinned as he watched Dob mop. Yes, Sidura, Dob replied humbly. A bow. Of course, you Bosmiri are supposed to be very handy with those. Bryn thought a moment and then asked, A bit of a marksman, were you? Dob nodded humbly. You will tutor my son, Woodlick, in archery. The master said after another moment's pause. Woodlick was 12 years of age and had been rather sadly spoiled by his mother, Bryn's late wife. Yawning. The boy was useless at swordplay, fearful of being cut. He embarrassed his father's pride, but the personality defect seemed ideally suited to the bow. Bryn had his castellan purchase a finely wrought bow, several quivers of arrows, and ordered targets to be set up in the wildflower field next to the plantation house. In a few days' time, the lessons began. For the first few days, the master watched Woodlick and Dob to be certain that the slave knew how to teach. He was pleased to see the boy learn the grips and the different stances. Business concerns, however, had to take precedent. Bryn only had time to see it that the lessons were continuing, but not how well they were progressing. It was a month's time before the issue was re-examined. Bryn and his castellan were reviewing the plantation's earnings and expenses, and they had come to the area of miscellaneous household costs. You might also check to see how many targets in the field need to be repaired. I have already anticipated that, Sidora, said the castellan. They are in pristine condition. How is that possible? Bryn shook his head. I've seen targets fall apart after only a few good shots. There shouldn't be anything left after a month's worth of lessons. There are no holes of any kind in the targets, Sidora. See for yourself. As it happened at that hour, the marksmanship lesson was underway. Bryn walked across the field, watching Dob guide Woodlick's arm as the boy took aim at the sky. The arrow flew up into an arc, over the top of the target, burying itself in the ground. Bryn examined the target and found it to be, as his castellan said, in pristine condition. No arrow had touched it. Master Woodlick, you must pull your right arm down further, Dob was saying, and the follow-through is essential if you expect your arrow to gain any height. Height? Bryn snarled. What about accuracy? Unless he's been secretly racking up a high kill ratio on birds, you haven't taught my son a thing about marksmanship. Dob bowed humbly. Sidura, first Master Woodlick must become comfortable with the weapon before he need worry about accuracy. In Valenwood, we learn by watching the bolt arc at different levels and different winds before we try very hard to strike targets. Bryn's face turned purple with fury. I'm not a fool. I should have known not to trust a slave with my boy's education. The master grabbed Dob and shoved him toward the plantation house. Dob, head down, began the humble, shuffling walk he had learned in his domestic duties. Woodlick, tears streaming down his face, tried to follow. You stay and practice, roared his father. Try aiming at the target itself, not at the sky. You're not coming back into this house until there is one hole in that damned bullseye. The boy tearfully returned to practice, while Bryn brought Dob into the courtyard and called for his whip. Dob suddenly broke away and scrambled to hide between some barrels in the center of the yard. Take your punishment, slave. I should have never shown you mercy the day I bought you, Bryn bellowed, bringing the whip down on Dob's exposed back again and again. I have to toughen you up. There'll be no more soft jobs as tutor and valet in your future. Woodlick's plaintive yell drifted in from the meadow. I can't. Father, I can't hit it. Master Woodlick, Dob cried, back as loud as he could, his voice shaking with pain. Keep your left arm straight and aim slightly east. The wind has changed. Stop confusing my son, Bryn screamed. You'll be in the Saltress fields if I don't beat you to death first, like you deserve. Dob, the boy wailed, far away. I still can't hit it. Master Wadlik, take 4 steps back, aim east, and don't be afraid of the height. Dob tore away from the barrels, hiding under a cart near the wall. Bryn pursued him, raining down blows. The boy's arrow sailed high over the target and kept climbing, reaching a pinnacle at the edge of the plantation house before coming down in a magnificent arc. Bryn tasted the blood before he realized he had been hit. Gingerly, he raised his hands and felt the arrowhead protruding out of the back of his neck. He looked at Dob, crouching under the wagon, and thought he saw a thin smile cross the slave's lips. Just for an instant before he died, Bryn saw the face of the rogue highwayman on Dob. Bullseye, Master Wadlik, Dob crowed. Well, range goat. I needed its soul. You can keep all the parts if you really want. Oh, you scared the shit out of me, boy. Boy. Oh, why is this crab so big? Is this perspective, or is that the world's biggest crab? Fucking... Ooh, god damn. I might have just... He a big boy. No, he a big boy. Chunky, yeah, he thick. He thick. That. There's just like a secret update to Skyrim, and now all of the crabs are so large. I guess I didn't need to take that tunic, and yet I did. It's 4:06 in the AM in the game. In my life, it's 1:02 in the AM. I don't really need those arrows. They're very gentle baby arrows. An adventurer's journal. There's something upsetting about these caravan attacks. I expected bandits, but the remains we saw were literally torn apart, rent limb from limb. Yet no mere animal could coordinate an attack on a full-size merchant train, and wolves don't take prisoners. We found a trail leading up into the hills. We'll make camp here for the night, then set out at dawn. Whoever, whatever murdered those people, will make sure it never happens again. So I guess it's probably in that terrifying cave.